MTV and the Race Barrier, How Michael Jackson Changed Television History with Thriller. On August 1, 1981, MTV launched with a promise: music television for everyone. But here's what they didn't tell you. For the first year and a half, MTV played almost zero black artists. Zero. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't oversight. This was policy. And it took one man, one album, and one record label executive's nuclear threat to blow the doors wide open. By the end of this story, you'll understand why Thriller wasn't just a music video. It was a declaration of war against the most powerful gatekeepers in television history. Let's dive in. Let me paint the picture for you. August 1981. MTV launches as the first 24-hour music video channel. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of waiting for your favorite song on the radio, you could watch it performed visually, over and over. The network immediately exploded with young audiences. Cable companies were adding MTV to their lineups across America. Advertisers were throwing money at this new platform. Within months, MTV had become the most influential force in the music industry. If your video got played on MTV, your album sold. Period. Artists who got heavy rotation became superstars overnight. But there was one massive problem that nobody in the press was talking about. MTV's playlist was almost entirely white. Here's where it gets interesting. In those first 18 months, MTV played virtually no black artists. Not occasionally, not rarely, almost never. The network's executives had a carefully crafted excuse. They claimed MTV's format was rock music. They said their audience, mostly white suburban teenagers, wanted rock. And according to them, black artists didn't make rock music. They made R&B, soul, funk. Different genres, different audience, different network. But here's what that really meant. Prince, one of the most innovative rock guitarists of the era, couldn't get played. Rick James, who was dominating the charts, was rejected. The Busboys, a rock band that happened to be black, were turned away. This wasn't about genre. This was about race, and everyone in the industry knew it. Now, here's the kicker. While MTV was building its empire on the backs of artists like Duran Duran, Pat Benatar, and The Police, the biggest artist on the planet was being completely shut out. Michael Jackson had just released Thriller in November 1982. By early 1983, the album was already massive. It had gone multi-platinum. Singles like Billie Jean and Beat It were dominating radio. Black radio, white radio, pop radio, rock radio. Thriller was crossing every demographic boundary that existed, but MTV wouldn't touch it. CBS Records, Michael's label, submitted the Billie Jean video in early 1983. MTV rejected it. Not because of quality. The video was beautifully shot, innovative, iconic. They rejected it because Michael Jackson was black, and according to MTV's programming philosophy, their audience didn't want to see black artists. But that's not all. Here's what was really happening behind closed doors. Walter Yetnikoff, the president of CBS Records, was watching this situation unfold, and he was furious. Yetnikoff was one of the most powerful executives in the music industry, loud, aggressive, willing to go to war for his artists. And he had leverage that most people didn't understand. CBS Records had a massive roster. Not just Michael Jackson. They had Billy Joel. They had Bruce Springsteen. They had dozens of artists that MTV desperately needed. Yetnikoff saw exactly what MTV was doing, and he knew he had the power to stop it. So he made a phone call that would change television history forever. This is where it gets deeply personal. Yetnikoff called MTV executives, and according to multiple sources, including Yetnikoff himself, he delivered an ultimatum that left zero room for negotiation. He told them that if they didn't start playing Michael Jackson's videos, he would pull every single CBS Records artist from MTV. No more Billy Joel, no more Springsteen, no more anything. MTV could explain to their audience why suddenly their favorite artists disappeared. The message was clear: play Michael Jackson or lose half your programming. MTV's executives were stunned. Nobody had ever threatened them like this. But Yetnikoff wasn't bluffing. He had the power, he had the conviction, and he had Michael Jackson, the biggest artist on earth, being denied access to the biggest platform in music television. Now here's what makes this moment even more significant. Yetnikoff didn't just wake up one day and decide to fight this battle. He had been watching MTV's racist programming for over a year. He had seen them reject Rick James multiple times. He had witnessed Prince get turned away. But here's the thing. Yetnikoff was a businessman first. He needed the right moment, the right artist, and the right leverage. Michael Jackson gave him all three. Thriller wasn't just selling well, it was selling at a pace that nobody in the industry had ever seen before. By the time Yetnikoff made that call, Thriller had already sold over 10 million copies in the United States alone. Radio stations across every format were playing it. Pop, rock, R&B, adult contemporary. Michael Jackson had achieved something that seemed impossible. He had unified the entire fragmented radio landscape. And MTV, the supposed future of music promotion, was sitting on the sidelines pretending he didn't exist. Yetnikoff saw the absurdity of this situation, and he weaponized it. But here's what really gave Yetnikoff his power. MTV wasn't just dependent on CBS Records for content. They were dependent on CBS for credibility. In 1983, MTV was still relatively new. They needed major label support to legitimize their platform. If CBS Records publicly declared that MTV was racist and pulled their entire catalog, other labels would have followed. Warner Brothers was watching. Atlantic was watching. The domino effect would have destroyed MTV's reputation before they even established themselves as a permanent fixture in the industry. Yetnikoff understood this industry dynamic better than anyone. He wasn't just threatening to remove content. He was threatening to expose MTV's racism in a way that would create an industry-wide backlash. The executives at MTV knew that once that door opened, they would lose control of the narrative entirely, so they blinked. They added Billie Jean to rotation, hoping it would be enough to make the problem go away. But Michael Jackson and Walter Yetnikoff had other plans. Here's exactly how that matters. MTV had no choice. They could fight this battle and lose their entire network, or they could bend. In March 1983, MTV added Billie Jean to their rotation. Not heavy rotation, light rotation. They were testing the waters, but something unexpected happened. The audience went crazy. Request lines lit up. Viewers wanted more Michael Jackson. The racist assumption that white teenagers wouldn't watch black artists was completely shattered in real time. MTV had been wrong. Their format excuse had been exposed as exactly what it was, a lie. Billie Jean became one of the most requested videos on the network. And suddenly, MTV's executives had a new problem. If they didn't play more Michael Jackson, their own audience would revolt. But wait, there's more. Michael wasn't satisfied with just getting his foot in the door. He wanted to blow the door off its hinges. In December 1983, Michael released the music video for Thriller. And this wasn't just a music video. This was a 14-minute cinematic event, directed by John Landis, who had just made An American Werewolf in London. Budget, $500,000, the most expensive music video ever made at that time. Choreography that would become iconic. Makeup and special effects that rivaled Hollywood horror films. A narrative structure that had never been done in music videos before. Michael Jackson turned himself into a zombie, a werewolf, and a dancer in a red leather jacket that would become one of the most recognizable images in pop culture history. Now, here's the kicker. MTV knew they had to play it. Thriller wasn't just another video. It was an event. Michael's label positioned it as a premiere. MTV aired Thriller in December 1983, and the response was seismic. The network was flooded with requests. The video became the most watched, most discussed piece of content MTV had ever aired. Suddenly, Michael Jackson wasn't just in rotation, he was MTV. His videos were the draw. His presence was the reason people tuned in. And here's what nobody in the press was saying out loud. MTV's racist format excuse had been completely obliterated by the biggest artist in the world, who happened to be black. Let me break down exactly what this meant for the industry. Before Thriller, black artists were systematically excluded from MTV. After Thriller, the doors started opening, not because MTV suddenly developed a conscience, but because Michael Jackson proved that race didn't matter to audiences. Talent mattered, innovation mattered, quality mattered. Prince got played, Tina Turner got played, Lionel Richie got played. The narrative that MTV's audience only wanted white rock artists had been exposed as a convenient excuse for institutional racism. And Michael Jackson had forced the change single-handedly, with help from one record executive willing to go nuclear. Here's what happened in the immediate aftermath that most people never talk about. Within 6 months of Thriller dominating MTV, the network's advertising revenue jumped significantly. Brands realized that MTV's audience was more diverse than the network had claimed. Pepsi came calling, and they didn't just want MTV advertising. They wanted Michael Jackson himself, signing him to a $5 million endorsement deal in 1984, the biggest celebrity endorsement in history at that time. MTV executives watched this unfold and understood the business reality. They hadn't just been wrong morally. They had been wrong financially. By excluding black artists, they had been leaving money on the table. Michael Jackson didn't just break a cultural barrier. He proved that diversity was profitable. And in the music industry, profit talks louder than anything else. Here's where it gets even better. The impact of Thriller went beyond just music videos. MTV's entire programming strategy shifted. They created shows specifically around Michael Jackson content. Thriller was re-aired constantly. Michael's other videos got heavy rotation. By 1984, Michael Jackson was the face of MTV. The same network that had rejected Billie Jean a year earlier was now building their brand around the artist they had tried to exclude. The irony was staggering. But more importantly, the cultural shift was irreversible. MTV could never go back to their whites-only format. Michael Jackson had changed the network forever. But that's not all. Here's what people don't realize about the Thriller video itself. It wasn't just entertainment. It was strategy. Michael knew exactly what he was doing. He made a video so expensive, so cinematic, so technically brilliant that MTV couldn't ignore it without looking foolish. He partnered with John Landis, a white director with Hollywood credibility, which gave the project mainstream legitimacy. He created a narrative that appealed to horror fans, music fans, dance fans, cutting across demographic lines. He made himself undeniable. This wasn't luck. This was calculated brilliance. Think about what that means. Michael Jackson didn't just break the race barrier at MTV by being talented. He broke it by being strategic. He understood that MTV's executives responded to power and leverage, so he made sure his product was so good, so marketable, so culturally massive that excluding it would hurt MTV more than playing it. He turned their racism into a business liability. And when they finally played Billie Jean and the audience responded positively, he followed up with Thriller, a video so monumental that it became a cultural phenomenon. By the time MTV realized what had happened, they were dependent on Michael Jackson content. He had flipped the power dynamic completely. Let me break down what an artist without Michael's specific advantages could never have achieved. They could never have the backing of Walter Yetnikoff, one of the most powerful executives in the industry, willing to threaten nuclear war with MTV. They could never have the budget to create a $500,000 music video that looked like a Hollywood film. They could never have the global superstar status that made excluding them a PR disaster. They could never have the crossover appeal that shattered MTV's demographic excuse. They could never have the cultural momentum that made Thriller an event, not just a video. They could never have the strategic vision to understand exactly how to dismantle institutional barriers. And they could never have the combination of talent, timing, and leverage that Michael Jackson had in 1983. Here's exactly how to think about it. MTV didn't change because they suddenly became progressive. MTV changed because Michael Jackson, with the help of Walter Yetnikoff, forced them to change. It was economic warfare disguised as music promotion, and it worked. By 1984, MTV was a different network. Black artists were getting played, the format excuse was dead, and Michael Jackson was the king of the platform that had tried to shut him out. So, there you have it. The real reason MTV's race barrier fell wasn't because of protests or boycotts or media pressure. It fell because one artist was too big to ignore, one executive was willing to go to war, and one video was too culturally massive to exclude. Michael Jackson didn't ask MTV for permission. He made them irrelevant if they didn't comply. That's power. That's strategy. That's how you change history. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.